Two-star quarterbacks have seen their ADPs fall drastically over the last month. We'll tell you who they are in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly after you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, we're going to look at the latest batch of ADP, courtesy of Dynasty League Football, and some of the more interesting names that we've seen rise and fall. But Kate, let's start with a couple of quarterbacks who have had drastic falls. I want to start with Patrick Mahomes, widely known as the best quarterback in the NFL, right? He has seen his ADP take a huge hit. He's gone from 33 overall down to 60. Just last month, he was QB2 in your dynasty leagues. Now he's down all the way to QB6. Is that fair?
I mean, I think it's extremely fair, Marcus. We are through now 6 weeks of the season. Patrick Mahomes, he's only played 5 games just because of their week 6 bye. But the best QB finish that Patrick Mahomes has to this point in the season, QB 14. That was back in week 2. We have not seen the ceiling of Patrick Mahomes. Now, yes, you mentioned best quarterback in the NFL. I'm not gonna argue with that. There are things that, like, Patrick Mahomes can do things that nobody else can do, period. But it's not translating to fantasy points. Now, why is that? I mean, we're seeing less, big time throws. We're seeing still like the lowest ADOT ever, 5.7 yards average depth of target. We were complaining about his average depth of target last year at 6.9 yards. This is more than a yard less per pass attempt here. Like, that does not translate to the big games that we're accustomed to from Patrick Mahomes. And I mean, like, for real, we haven't seen a QB, like a top 5 QB finish since week 7 of last year. I get it. Like, we're not seeing the fantasy upside, even if the upside on the field is that significant.
Not only do I think it's fair, Kate, I still think it's a little bit too high. Now, there are reasons why you can buy into Mahomes as a dynasty quarterback, because I think a lot of all these names, he's the most likely just to be like a top 14 dynasty quarterback for the next 7-8 years, right? Like, there's some stability here in the sense of like, hey, it's still Patrick Mahomes. He's 29 years old. But like, make the case for me why CJ Stroud should be behind, not only just like one spot in the rankings, but being drafted 10 spots behind Patrick Mahomes. We know CJ Stroud is going to be a long-time starter. Like, he's already established that he's one of the top 7 or 8 quarterbacks in the league. He's got more weapons. Why should Stroud be behind Patrick Mahomes? Even that one, Kate, what about Caleb Williams? QB 11 right now. I'm buying Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams is going to be a superstar. Tell me why Caleb Williams should be ahead of Patrick Mahomes.
I think that the thing that you're going to hold on to with Patrick Mahomes is that the offense is going to figure it out. Can I offer a conspiracy theory?
Do we think they're going to figure it out? Because I just don't. I have major concerns about this
still have
offense.
An Eric Bieniemy hangover.
I
Because
mean, it's possible.
You know what's weird? We saw a lot of success from Patrick Mahomes, and it seems like right now they just don't know how to recapture that magic. Again, I
just don't think they have the
last
dudes to do it. Honestly, I don't think they have the players to be able to play that up-tempo offense.
So here's the thing. They tried to get the dudes this year.
That's
So
right.
like, and obviously next year they're going to get Rashee Rice back. They're going to have
Kind of.
Kelsey a year older, maybe. But they're gonna have Xavier Worthy, another year of experience in the offense. Then if you like, maybe you're out on Patrick Mahomes this year, but if you think that they are going to eventually get the weapons to have this up-tempo offense to start being able to strike downfield, which is what Xavier Worthy and Marquise Hollywood Brown were supposed to open up the offense to do, then maybe is it time to buy? See, I'm just kind of confused about what to do about Patrick Mahomes because
Uh,
we know the upside. We know that they did make a concerted effort. So, like, this is not on the organization. They made a concerted effort. They just got blown out by injuries, which has been super unfortunate. If you do believe that they're eventually going to have the weapons when they're healthy, then theoretically, should
The
we
thing is,
Patrick Mahomes?
I don't think Rashee Rice is going to
Not
play
for
for most of.
2024.
Yeah, I don't think Rashee Rice is going to play much of the 2025 season. He had a more significant knee injury than I think people realize. He's going to be out for at least a year with a knee injury, and then you've got the suspension coming up. I don't think Travis Kelce is going to be back next year. I think he'll retire. And I just think the Chiefs are starting to shift more of their resources over to defense because they believe give Mahomes a top 5 defense and all ask him to be great and come up with 20 points somehow by himself. And that's going to win us games in the playoffs. So I don't think this offense is suddenly going to be a top 5 offense next year. I'm not out on Mahomes, but there are more than 6 quarterbacks that I would take over him. Kate, I want to ask you about another quarterback here, Anthony Richardson, because for most of the offseason, Anthony Richardson was locked in as a top 6 dynasty quarterback. He was QB5 for 1 month, I believe. In 1 month time, from September to October, he's dropped all the way down to QB 14 behind Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams, Brock Purdy, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. Do you think that's fair?
Yes. And Marcus, maybe not that drastic of a fall, but I get it. Like, here's the thing. It's not just the fact that he is a very questionable passer, right? That's a big concern in and of itself. Among quarterbacks with 50 plus pass attempts this year, none of them, not even Bryce Young, has a lower accurate throw rate per PFF than Anthony Richardson. He also ranks second in terms of uncatchable inaccurate throws. So, like, he is all over the place. He can't complete the simple layups that are laid out in front of him. And that's a big, big issue for the offense because if you're not having the explosive 20-yard plays, the drive is dead. Like, there is no way to sustain a drive when you can't complete passes in the short and intermediate areas of the field. And that's where we've been seeing Anthony Richardson struggle. And that's not indicative of a quarterback that's going to have longevity in the National Football League. Then you throw in the concerns that, you know what, the biggest problem in deterrent to scoring fantasy points is not being on the football
Yeah.
field. Marcus?
Yeah. Yeah. He's missed most of his NFL career. I mean, we only have, I think it's like 3 games, Kate, where he has started and finished a game through 2 years.
And you look at kind of the situation. So this was the game against the Steelers where he got this hip injury, came out of the game, looked to be in a lot of pain. And guess what? They threw him back out there and had another run play. Like, you cannot protect this dude enough from himself. I have the durability concerns. I have the concerns that, like, is he a good quarterback or is he a really good athlete with a really strong arm, right? Like, we knew coming out that he was a really great deep passer, and that's translated so far in the league. But you know what? We also knew that he struggled in the short to intermediate throws. Guess what? We've also seen that as a pro. Like, I haven't seen the growth but I guess he also hasn't had the time to grow. He hasn't had the on-field reps. So, like, how patient do you have to be with Anthony Richardson? I don't know.
Just to show how much his value has dropped in single QB leagues, his ADP was 56 going into the month of September. It's now down to 127. And because he's already missed 2 games in October, I got to believe by the time we get to November that's going to be in the 140s. So I don't think this fall has even begin to stop. I think by the time we get to November, you're going to see quarterbacks like Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield jump ahead of him. And honestly, I don't hate it because those guys are at least playing. Like, they don't miss games. And again, you made the point, like, it's really hard to score fantasy points if you're never on the field.
And I mean, to your point, you look at a Baker Mayfield. And again, this is not to say that like the upside of Baker Mayfield is that much greater, but you know what Baker Mayfield has under his belt this year? 5 QB1 finishes. 4 out of 6 weeks, he has finished as a top 5 fantasy quarterback. He does not miss Dave Canales
Nope.
apparently whatsoever. He got the bag this offseason. Like, he's in a great situation long term. It's an interesting discussion to have. And, you know, I want to point out, Marcus, for those everydayers out there, I feel like we did a good job warning you that an Anthony Richardson story could be an up and down one. It could be a bit of a roller coaster. I think we're seeing that play out. I think the biggest question in terms of his dynasty value is just how long is the leash going to be for the Indianapolis Colts? How long before they say, all right, we need to start looking at the future?
Okay, let's talk about one rookie who has seen their ADP jump by more than 60 spots in 1 month. We will get to that player next. This episode is brought to you by Arena Club. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on, let's say, a Patrick Mahomes rookie card just isn't something that's in the cards. I love collecting. Like, I collect cards all the time, but that's some serious money to drop. But thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed, including a Patrick Mahomes rookie, a CJ Stroud rookie prism, was hit in the last few weeks on Arena Club slab pack drops. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform that you have to check out right now. You can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL. That is arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL. Use promo code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. I absolutely love Gametime. It is the only ticketing app that I use when I want to go to live events such as football and basketball games. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. All you have to do is go to the app, and Gametime Picks will filter out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite part of Gametime is that they have a panoramic view of your seats. You know exactly what your seats are going to look like and what the view is going to look like before you buy. I like sitting in the end zone, but I don't like sitting where the goalposts are directly in my view. I like to be off to the side a little bit. You can get a panoramic view of your seats before you buy. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LockedOnNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LockedOnNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are discussing the latest batch of ADP from DynastyLeagueFootball.com. Okay, let's talk about a quarterback who I think you know well, who has seen a drastic rise in their ADP. Jayden Daniels, going into the month of September, had an ADP of 96.7 in single QB leagues. That's all the way up to 33.5 And right now, Kate, he is the consensus QB2. In fact, you look at the ADPs, Josh Allen's ADP, 32.75, Jayden Daniels, 33. We are getting very close to Jayden Daniels becoming the QB1 in Dynasty Leagues.
Whoo! I just want to thank my friends, my family, for making this ADP possible, because my man deserves it, right? So, like, let's go back to LSU Jayden Daniels. What we saw from Jayden Daniels at LSU was a more than capable passer, an extremely mobile, athletic, speedy, quick dude that can make guys miss in the open field. The run game, obviously, a huge part of his success there, but it wasn't everything. It like, if you take away his rushing stats, he'd still be one of the best passers in all of college football. So, like, I loved that about his game. It felt like, the floor as a passer was so incredibly safe. And I thought Anthony Richardson was just such a great comp, because remember, this offseason, Anthony Richardson was floating between QB5 and QB6 pretty much all summer. And that had me a little nervous, because I was like, well, we don't know what the floor of a passer is for him. We don't know what we're going to see here in the pros. I already wasn't totally sold on everything we saw in college. That was a complete opposite with Jayden Daniels. We're seeing it play out in real time. And I think what people are just so excited about is that dual threat mobility. It's not even like he's got the best cast of weapons. Like, he's not dealing with the same receiving core as a Caleb Williams. It's pretty much Terry McLaurin and then making the rest of the guys work. And it's working.
Can I give you some other analysis here that is not like super highbrow analysis on Jayden
Please.
Daniels? He's really fun to watch, right?
Yes.
Like, and if you have him on your dynasty teams, like, you're probably loving it, because he might be the most fun player in the NFL right now. And maybe you could make an argument that somebody like Jordan Love, who's a very, very good football player, is the better dynasty asset. But there's no doubt that Jayden Daniels is more fun to watch, right? And fantasy football and dynasty football should be fun. You should want to have players on your team that you get excited to watch. So I completely understand the hype around Jayden Daniels. Not only is he good, but he's one of the most exciting players in the league. Okay, this makes total sense to me.
Makes total sense. And you are right. Like, you do want players on your team that you want to root for. Obviously, you want it to make sense with your roster construction, but Jayden Daniels is this dude that you can root for. And I got to admit, one of my biggest points of hesitancy so far with Jayden Daniels, or in the pre-draft process, was Jayden Daniels, was just his slight frame. Like, what is he going to do when he gets these 300-pound dudes smacking him full force? He's done a pretty good job, I think, of avoiding some of the bigger hits that we saw at LSU. I mean, he would get knocked around like a rag doll at LSU. And it seemed like he did not know how to fully brace himself for some of these bigger hits. I feel like we're seeing that. It's become less of a concern for me right now watching him play in the NFL than I feel like it was at LSU.
Yeah, I agree. That the injury concerns are the only thing that I have for him. And so far, knock on wood, he's been healthy. I want to mention one more quarterback that has seen a big rise in their ADP, and I actually just mentioned him. It's Jordan Love, 100 overall in ADP going into September, now up to 51, QB4, ahead of Jalen Hurts, ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Remember, Hurts and Mahomes were 2 and 3 all offseason long. Do you agree with that? Jordan Love all the way up to QB4?
It feels rich, but here's the thing. I think people are starting to gravitate towards safety at the quarterback position, because I think what we're seeing, like Jalen Hurts in this offense, I mean, he hasn't looked fully right since like week 10 last season, right? Like, it's been a while since we've watched Jayden Hurts play football and say, like, oh, that's Jalen Hurts. Like, Jordan Love, we're kind of seeing this like Brett Favre YOLO type of dude who's just gonna sling up the ball. He's gonna make some mistakes, of course, but like, he's got a long-term deal in place. He's one of the NFL's top paid quarterbacks. He's got a really talented group of skill position players around him. Like, the depth at wide receiver for this group is just absolutely insane. For you to lose Dontavian Wicks and have that only be your fourth best wide receiver on the team, and that's not even counting Tucker Kraft, who's been a great receiving asset for them through his first 2 seasons. I think you're seeing the group of playmakers around him. I think you're seeing the kind of, you know, he's not afraid to take chances. He's,
Nope.
sometimes a lot of the time to his detriment, but that's kind of the YOLO mentality almost I feel like we're missing from Patrick Mahomes at this point in time. Like, I want to see some more of that danger. I like the rush. And I think, yeah, that's probably accounting for some of that rise.
Yeah. So Jordan Love, including the playoffs, has 10 straight games of at least 2 passing touchdowns. Right. And that's where he's getting his values. He's just throwing a lot of touchdowns, where you look at somebody like Mahomes, here's his touchdowns this year: 1, 2, 2, 1, 0. It's just way more fluky, right? And maybe that'll bounce back, but probably not, because like last year, Patrick Mahomes had 27 touchdowns. Jordan Love, in his first full year starting, I think 5 more touchdowns in the regular season passing. I just think this Packers offense, they want to throw the ball. They want to throw it when they get into the red zone. I think he's relatively safe. He does give you some rushing upside, not as much as Josh Allen or Lamar or Jalen Hurts, but he's not a statue back there. And when you're throwing multiple touchdowns every single game, it's going to be awfully hard for you not to become a top 10 dynasty quarterback every single week.
Yeah, very, very fair. And I mean, we've seen that translate to upside here in fantasy, right? Like,
Yep.
you look at his 4-game sample size. He has been a QB1 in 3 out of 4 games played this year. He's had 2 top 3 finishes. Like, he's giving you upside while also giving you some of that floor. Like, even last week, right? 15 QB 15 on the week. Like, you'll take that, right?
Yep.
Like, if you have that ceiling of top 3 fantasy QB, then you're going to be a little bit more forgiving of those QB 15 weeks when, mind you, Patrick Mahomes has 1 game all season where he's finished as better than QB 15. That was QB 14 back in week 2. You understand the upside, and he feels kind of safe at this point, I think, thanks to a really talented group of skill position players they've built around him.
Well, that's a transition. Let's talk about his number 1 receiver in this offense, Jayden Reed, who is among the biggest dynasty risers. We'll discuss him next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's number 1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. I think week 7 of the NFL season is going to be incredible. We've got some awesome games, including the Packers-Texans at 1 o'clock, Lions-Vikings, and then 4:25 Eastern. We get a Super Bowl rematch between the Chiefs and the 49ers. Go to FanDuel.com right now. Check out all of the lines and odds available. Go make a $5 bet, and then you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed once you place that bet. Again, FanDuel.com, America's number 1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Download that podcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Okay, let's talk about Jayden Reed, who has had a massive rise. And I'm going to continue to say you were right on Jayden Reed. I thought Christian Watson was the better dynasty asset. I was wrong. Jayden Reed in 1 month has gone from 57th overall to 24th overall. He is now up to wide receiver 14, ahead of players like Drake London, Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Rome Odunze. Does that feel too high for you, or are you still all in?
How much more do you need to see from Jayden Reed before you believe in Jayden Reed? It's kind of crazy because usually sometimes we'll get take locked, right? These guys have Players will have high draft capital, and we're like, okay, well, let's be patient. I want to wait for them to hit. In Jayden Reed's case, he has draft capital, he has the production profile, and still nobody wants to believe in him. And I cannot understand why. Over the past 2 seasons, Marcus, I mean, Jayden Reed has showed you pretty much everything that you want to see. This year ranks second in terms of fantasy points per route run, second in terms of fantasy points per target, per player profile, ranks third in yards per target, 14th in yards per reception. They're still utilizing him in the run game, which is exciting. And you know what I think is the best and most underrated fact when it comes to Jayden Reed is that we're seeing his usage absolutely skyrocket at 11 personnel. There was a lot of concern that he was not going to be utilized in these all field situations. We were scared that we weren't going to see his usage increase. Like, is he going to only play the slot? Is he going to what are we going to do? No, he's on the field in all personnel situations. And I think that's kind of this thing that you can hang your hat on right now and say, like, okay, Jayden Reed is the guy. He is the wide receiver one for this offense. He's not just the gadget slot guy anymore. They want him on the field at all times.
I mean, he's really good. I don't disagree. Still feels a little rich for me. Like, if you're asking whether I would rather have Garrett Wilson or Jayden Reed moving forward, I'd rather have Garrett Wilson or even George Pickens, who, I mean, I've kind of gone back and forth on George Pickens. I would rather have George Pickens, Brian Thomas. So I like Jayden Reed. There's no doubt he's the number one receiver in this offense. There's no doubt he's the most valuable receiver on this offense. His ADP should rise. It's just a little rich for me. That's all.
I think I want to know, like, what more does Jayden Reed need?
To be honest, it probably has nothing to do with Jayden Reed. I think it's because they use so many different receivers, and there are weeks like last week. Like, now, Reed caught a touchdown, but it was 6 for 28, right? Like, most of his work was underneath, and it was Romeo Doubs who had the 2 touchdowns, right? There's other weeks where it's Dontavian Wicks, and if Christian Watson's healthy, sometimes you see Watson. I think some of these other receivers are just more, I don't want to say established in their offense, but they are so clearly better than all the other options. And again, this isn't Reed's fault because no other team in the NFL has this much depth at receiver. But I think somebody like, I don't know, George Pickens, right, is just so much better than everybody else on the offense that I do feel like eventually it's going to work itself out.
Here's the thing, though. I love George Pickens, right? Big George Pickens fan. But Jayden Reed is the guy that's actually producing with his opportunities.
Yes,
right
true.
now. Through the first 6 weeks of the season, Jayden Reed ranks 7th among all wide receivers in fantasy points per game, 15.45 fantasy points per game in half PPR scoring formats. He's getting a ton of opportunities. He's been extremely efficient with those opportunities. And this efficiency is dated back to the second half of last season. From week 10 on, Jayden Reed was a top 10 wide receiver in terms of scoring. So, like, dating back, we have literally almost a full season sample size of Jayden Reed being a wide receiver one.
I want to ask you how high up you would take Jayden Reed. So I'm going to name the receivers that are currently being drafted ahead of him. And let's go through it. Jayden Reed or Devontae Smith?
Jayden Reed, easily.
Okay, so we're at wide receiver 13. Rashee Rice or Jayden Reed?
Jayden Reed.
Yeah, no, that one's unfortunate. All right, so wide receiver 12. DK Metcalf, wide receiver 11.
I'm going to be honest. I'm a little hesitant with DK Metcalf just because I'm a little uncertain of how things are playing out.
Okay, let's skip that one.
I feel like there might be a trade that could influence, so I'm just kind of...
Okay. Puka Nacua, wide receiver 10.
I'll take Jayden Daniels.
Or Jayden Reed. Yeah, we take
I have Jayden Daniels' brain.
Chris Olave, wide receiver 9.
Yeah, I'll take Jayden Reed.
Jayden Reed or AJ Brown, wide receiver 8.
I'll take AJ Brown.
Okay, so you have him at wide receiver 9.
I guess I do.
Yeah,
I'm due for a rankings update, and I'm scared to do it.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, we'll recap Thursday Night Football. Should be a barn burner between Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler. Can't wait for that one, Kate. We'll also do some commotion, so make sure you tune in for that. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. Enjoy the game. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.